Hey guys, Mr. Ridgway here for our last lesson as part of our nation states unit. So we are going to be looking at this class just very briefly, Yugoslavia, but more than anything, we're going to be using it as a case study to really tie in lots of things that we've been looking at this unit and kind of see what happens when nationalism and things like state making and nation states when that kind of goes wrong. So there's a warm up there. Go ahead and complete it. But before we get to Yugoslavia, we're going to play something a little bit fun. We're going to look at centripetal and centrifugal forces on states and nation states. And I have a fun way that we're going to do this. So I call it breakups and getting back together. There is an activity right here. It's hiding behind my face, so I'll go ahead and move this so you can see. It says, let's take a look at what are called centrifugal and centripetal forces with nations and states. And so, again, if you need a reminder, a centrifugal force is any force that is splitting things up, like what a centrifuge does. And then centripetal, I always think about like flowers and that they're together. That's what brings things together, okay? Petal, like a flower, if you didn't pick up on that hint. So we've got a game down here that I'd like you to play. And you make a copy of it, and what you'll do is you'll try to sort the different forces onto which side you think it goes with, centripetal or centrifugal. Just be aware there are some that go in the middle. They apply to both. And then there's a key on the next slide in which you can check your answer. I'm not going to spoil it, though, so I'm not going to pull it up here. Once you're done with that, we're going to head on to our mini lesson. And for here, we're really bringing in lots of things that we've talked about in previous classes. It says, briefly summarize the breakup of Yugoslavia and the outcome. Okay? So grab the notes there, and then we're going to dive right into it. And we're going to be talking a lot about, as you can see here, identity and how we identify ourselves in relation to other people. Okay? So we're just going to dive right in here and knock this out really quickly. Yugoslavia was actually created after World War I and then recreated after World War II, as you see here. But Yugoslavia is really, really weird. And what I mean by that is it's very unusual in terms of how it was designed. And you'll definitely see this here. So after World War II, Yugoslavia is a federation. So it's a federal system, kind of like how the United States has a national government and then it has states underneath it. It's a federation of 6 republics, and each one of those republics has distinctive ethnicities and religions, and anything from Slovaks to Croats to Serbians, Bosnians, Christians, Orthodox Christians, Muslims. There's a huge mix of people, and just keep that in the back of your mind because that's going to become relevant here real shortly. Now, Yugoslavia mostly, okay, because we are talking about World War II, stays neutral in most of the Cold War. And it really kind of does a very effective job about playing both sides off of each other. Even its economy is like a balance of communism and capitalism. And so as it gets toward the end of the Cold War, like especially like in the 60s and 70s, Yugoslavia actually does really, really well. Up until the 80s, where things start to kind of go bad. But because Yugoslavia is so successful on the surface, I mean, it even hosts like the 1984 Winter Olympics, and it gets a lot of press for being this very multicultural country, et cetera, et cetera. But there were some things going on underneath the surface. So watch this video, and then it says, make a prediction. What do you think will happen when Yugoslavia breaks up? Well, we are, nope, please don't play that, so I don't get copyright infringement. Thank you. So yes, at its core, Yugoslavia is being pulled between multiple directions. There's a huge amount of centrifugal force going on here. Ethnicity, religion, even beliefs in different political systems like communism and capitalism. Now, the tensions that were there, that were really set, even, again, before World War II in many cases, this is all lurking there throughout the mid-1900s all the way up to the late 1900s. Many of these ethnicities and religions had either preyed upon their neighbors, or, for example, if there was like a conquering power, like, for example, like when the Nazis come in, they will prioritize some groups over others, and obviously treat others with, completely different sets of values. And all of this causes a huge amount of resentment that is continuing to build. So again, just an examination of centrifugal forces there. There is, though, something that is keeping a lid on things, and that is that guy right down there to the left. His name is Josip Broz Tito, who is this kind of mix again between like a communist capitalist, but he's a very, very strong force in Yugoslavian politics. And he rules Yugoslavia pretty much with a very iron hand from about World War II up through the 1980s. And that's when he dies. And when Tito dies, he was really, in a lot of sense, the glue that was holding Yugoslavia together. And he also emphasized things like brotherhood and unity, and he talked about, a lot of these kind of very centripetal kind of themes all the time in terms of keeping a national kind of Yugoslavia going. The problem is, though, is that after Tito's gone, well, he's gone, and all of a sudden we get people like Slobodan Milosevic, why am I mispronouncing words, in Serbia, and that's the guy there to the right. He looks really happy there. You would not like him if you met him in person, but you can't because he has since passed away, which I'm sure made a lot of people very happy. Because that dude right there, okay, he is one of the rulers of one of these republics, Serbia, and he is kindling lots and lots of ethnic Serbian nationalism to gain power. And by him doing this, he also fuels nationalism in other republics like Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, etc., etc. So really, people like Milosevic make the math much more complicated. You can kind of see him as kind of like an opposite of a Tito. As you can see, we'll just read this kind of section here to you. It says, in 1991-1992, Yugoslavia's federal system completely disintegrated, with the republics of Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, and Macedonia declaring independence. Fighting erupted in Slovenia and Croatia in 1991 and spilled over into Bosnia in 1982. And this very important last sentence, Bosnia became the site of yet another 20th century genocide. And please do watch the video that's there. It will really help explain to you why this happens. It has to do a lot with Milosevic and this big push of Serbian nationalism that occurs. The video also talks about like the role that the UN played, which was very weak and incredibly underwhelming, if anything. Again, just be ready. Just forewarning, there is some heavy stuff in there. So genocide and ethnic cleansing is nothing to joke about. Okay. So your exit ticket for this lesson says summarize what happened in Yugoslavia in exactly 20 words. Once you do that on your notes, okay, how we're going to end the block, and I will give you a brief overview here on YouTube, but this is probably something that I best talk to you in person if you decide to miss this lesson, is we're going to talk in class about how to best prep for finals. So if you don't remember, the document that I'm going to refer to a lot in class when we talk about this is that Mr. Ridgway's recommendations page, because we are going to go through together as a class about how to set up a finals studying schedule and how basically to best kind of start thinking about this final that is coming up in a few weeks, not only for my class, but for every class. So with that, I'm going to bring an end to this lesson because I've kind of talked about everything that I need to. And I will see you guys in our next unit. Bye-bye.